And here we are. Welcome to the Phoenix Suns Solar Panel midweek edition of the YouTube live show. We really do appreciate all of you guys joining us. And I do want to say, too, that if you normally just watch on the YouTube, this is a podcast. So if you ever want to hear just the audio form of this, by all means, you can go ahead and just listen to or subscribe to the podcast there. But joining us, as always, Mr. Greg Esposito at Espo on Twitter.
Hoy hoy.
And Dave King, managing editor of Bright Side of the Sun. You can find him on Twitter at Dave King NBA.
Hey there, folks.
So one thing we're going to do at the end of the episode, too, after we get done with early takeaways from this from the upcoming schedule, is we're going to get in a couple of mailbag questions. So by all means, if you're watching on YouTube right now, just go ahead and leave those in the YouTube chat, and we will make sure to get to them. Kind of a rough schedule coming out. A couple of takeaways that I had. They were actually tied for the hardest strength of schedule in the NBA, which isn't a surprise because they were one of the terrible teams in the NBA.
Right, they're not favored to beat anybody in the West, so it's gonna come out as the hardest in the NBA. Yes.
Well, yeah, they don't get to play themselves 4 times in a year, so that makes their schedule tougher. So that's
or anybody worse than them.
Yeah, exactly.
A couple of other takeaways if you are a fantasy basketball player. The Phoenix Suns play the fewest amount of prime nights, meaning games when there's only 3 to 4 games. The Suns are playing on very few of those days, so consider that if you're drafting in fantasy basketball. They only have 2 back-to-backs in the first 2 months of the season. Of course, one of those months just being, a short month, if you will, October. But regardless, favorable.
Yeah, I saw something on Twitter. I think it was John Schumann. Maybe it was somebody like him. But the Suns have the most, or either first or second in rest advantage, true rest advantage across the NBA this year, where they'll be more rested than their opponents more often than anybody else.
I mean, there's a lot of factors that you can like about this and where they could potentially surprise people in those kind of ways. It's tough, though. I mean, we knew it didn't matter when these games were, what days they fell. It's going to be a tough road for them in a Western Conference that is extremely difficult. I mean, that it did not matter what date those games were played. It was going to be an uphill climb for them.
I don't know. I don't necessarily agree. Yes, it's an uphill climb for sure, Greg, but I don't necessarily think it didn't matter. I think the Suns, for their psyche, for their momentum to change the way things have been going for so long with the 27% win percentage, is to have something manageable in the first couple of months. And if all of your tough games are in the first couple of months, the rest of the season might not have mattered as much because confidences might have been broken. So I know the Suns brought in a lot of young veterans who have been through the rigors of the NBA, and so maybe it won't matter as much as it would have a year ago. But I do think that it does matter to build a little momentum. So while the opening 2 weeks of the season, week and a half of the season, looks just as tough as last year, the month of November and the month of December look pretty well set up to have some success.
See, I kind of disagree with November. I mean, granted the games are spaced out. It's a heavy home schedule as you only play 4 games on the road in November, but it's not like they're playing the Sisters of the Poor in this schedule in that month of November. You're still playing Philly, Brooklyn.
Well, let's go.
Lakers.
Well, hold on. Let's go month by month. So in October, the Suns open the season with 5 games. In the month of October, they started home against Sacramento. Then they have a back-to-back, Denver and the Clippers, which is always just a killer. And then they got to be at Utah, and then they host Utah, and then they're at Golden State. There's going to be 4 losses in there, if not 5. And what I was thinking when I looked at this was a 1-4 start, winning one of those games, is like a neutral start, I think. And that's as good as it's going to get. If somehow they won a couple of those games, then maybe this team's better than we hoped.
That is the most Suns fan response ever. 1-4 would be a neutral start.
Come on, look at this schedule. I'm talking about this schedule.
I
this
agree.
schedule: Denver, the Clippers, Utah and Golden State. That's probably the top 4 seeds in the West.
Yep, and
by the end of the year.
And Sacramento was greatly improved last year, so it's
but they still only won 39 games.
Yeah,
I mean,
not a cakewalk necessarily either.
I never said a cakewalk. Nobody in the West is a cakewalk.
No, I know. I was agreeing with you though that this isn't this is a difficult first 5 for sure, and Sacramento's probably the one that you have the best chance to win out of that. I mean, Denver and the Clippers back to back.
Well, the Clippers are going to be going without Paul George, and the Golden State will be going without Klay Thompson. I mean, you do have that kind of thinking on it. And Utah is playing with a new point guard. They may not be fully in. I've never been a huge fan of that shooting guard that they have. I forget his name. We won't even have to mention him.
The lesser Devin Booker?
Yeah, the lesser Devin Booker. So, I mean, the Suns are probably going to be at most likely 1-4 after October. And if they're better than that, then, this might be a more interesting season than we thought. What do you think, Tim?
I have them going for their first 5 games, to your point, against really tough opponents. I do have them going at least 3 and 5 in their first 8. I do want to break it down a little bit, talking about November. So at home in November, they play the Sixers, the Heat, the Nets, the Lakers, the Hawks, the Celtics, Pelicans, Wizards, and Dallas. A lot of winnable games there.
Okay, a lot of winnable. I'm looking at Atlanta and Washington as your really winnable home games there.
Really? You don't think the Pelicans is a winnable game?
I don't think it's a lock. I think it's a competitive
winnable.
game.
You said winnable.
I mean,
I also think the Celtics are going to be not as good as they were perhaps last year.
I think Miami's not going to be as good. I think the Philadelphia and the Lakers are tough games, of course. Atlanta is definitely winnable. Atlanta had fewer quality wins last year for all the hype around Atlanta. Atlanta had an easier schedule because they're in the East, and that's not just blowharding. They really had an easier. I looked at their wins last year, and the Suns had actually more quality wins. Atlanta just had some more easy wins, and they ended up with winning a few more games on the season. I think the Pelicans are still going to be figuring stuff out. I think Washington is definitely easy to win. Definitely something that could be winnable. Dallas is definitely winnable. I don't even see how you can say Dallas wouldn't be winnable.
I think what I was trying to say is Atlanta and Washington are wins in my mind. Like if you're asking me, pick the games you definitely think are wins, it's Atlanta and Washington. Dallas is a toss-up. I mean, Dallas beat them senseless at one point last year. Dallas.
And the Suns beat Dallas senseless.
I don't think.
Pick.
But I'm saying I don't think Dallas is a guaranteed win. Winnable, yes. Not guaranteed. New Orleans should be a competitive game, but then I think Philly obviously significantly better. Denver significantly better. The Lakers significantly better, and Boston is marginally depending on what they get out of Gordon Hayward there. So like it's not like we're talking cakewalk. And somebody on the chat, and I apologize, didn't catch the name, but that they're all winnable games. Well, that's the hope this year, that all these games are at least competitive, that this roster is in these games this year, where last year most of these types of games would have been blowouts. But I just don't think there's any extremely easy games in these first 6 weeks.
No.
Well, it's the NBA, so none of the games are going to be easy.
There's no easy games in the whole 6 months.
Away in November, they have the Grizzlies, the Kings, the Wolves, and the Nuggets. I think 3 of the 4 games right there are winnable games as well. Like the schedule,
meaning that they'll be competitive, and the Suns could pull one out. Not that the Suns are an easy win. We're not trying to say that.
No, but I also think that we should be a little bit higher on the Suns team, given the talent upgrades that we've seen across the roster, as well as internal developments from DeAndre Ayton. We need to expect that. We need to expect one with Devin Booker, with a bit more chemistry with Kelly Oubre, and Mikal Bridges is going to become a better player too. So a lot of these games, I mean, what are the ones that are realistically the hardest for the Suns to win, right? The Jazz, that's going to be a really hard matchup for him. The Clippers, but to Dave's point, Paul George isn't going to be playing for that. Greg mentioned Golden State. Well, there's no Klay Thompson. You also have a Draymond Green that's a bit older.
Hold on. Yeah, so we're forgetting Kawhi is still playing for the Clippers, and a guy named Steph Curry is still playing. We're acting as like these teams are massively depleted, and they're still
you don't win with one
operating
player. The Suns would have won more games, man.
I'm just saying that
when those players are Steph and
the
Kawhi.
teams are not as dominant, especially at the early part of the season, and those are two of those teams that are not going to be as dominant. So I'm not saying they're going to win, but they do have a chance there. The Sixers, I don't think they're going to win that. I think that, to Dave's point, that they could beat the Heat. I think that they could beat the Nets too. I mean, the Nets really don't have a ton of talent right now on that roster, especially with Kevin Durant not playing. The Lakers, that's going to be a tough one for them. The Hawks, the Celtics, the Pelicans, Wizards, Dallas, they can beat them. Grizzlies, Kings, Wolves, they could beat them. Nuggets on the road, that's probably a schedule loss.
I see 6 to 8 wins in this first 6 weeks.
My number was 8. 8 to 10. 8 and 10 out of after 6 weeks.
I'm going 12-6.
Wow.
There is not a chance they're 12-6 after the first 6 weeks.
I love it, Tim. I love it.
I think that I think the Suns are going to be better, and I think a lot of those teams are. I look at those rosters, and I'm not scared of them if I'm somebody else.
I tell you what. Let's flip the script a little bit. Let's think about all the other teams looking at the Suns on the schedule. They're going to say easy win, right?
Oh, yes.
Every other team.
Maybe not the players, but definitely schmucks like us covering the teams.
Doing podcasts,
yes.
They're going to say easy win. Yes. Everyone but Memphis.
No, I think Memphis also will be saying easy win.
No, I just did a Q&A with the managing editor of Memphis, and he gave the Suns the nod. On
okay.
talent. So,
well, good. That makes me feel.
Managing editor of the Grizzly Bear Blues, not general manager of the actual team.
That would have been impressive if you got him to admit that.
Yeah, no, John Hollinger and I think he's still in their front office. We're not that close.
But honestly,
ever since he called Goran Dragic tragic.
But I mean, honestly, if this team's sitting at 8-8 or 8-8, 8-10 after 18, I think that's a huge win coming out of
Me
this.
too. Me too. But you know what? I'm not gonna shit on Tim here. 12-6 would be incredible. I think we would all be like having heart attacks if the Suns were 12-6, and it'd be great heart attacks. You'd die with a smile on your face.
Oh, I would love to be 100% wrong in what I'm saying. I don't take any joy in thinking that they're going to be at best 8-10 out of those 18 games. I would love that for Tim to be right, or our friend of the program, John Bloom, who's predicting 41-41 for the season, being right. Believe me, I would love to see that. The last time I truly had fun was that surprise season when they won 48, and it was amazing. Yeah, I mean, that was the year I talked Bloom off of betting his house on the over, but
you shouldn't have.
But honestly, you
owe him a house.
Pessimism is something that 9 of the last 10 years you would have been right with, as a Suns fan. So, would I love to see Tim be right? Yes, I would love for you to be right, Tim.
I also think the Suns have a more favorable schedule in terms of home heavy. Opponents, fewer back-to-backs in the first couple of months of the season, and I think that they're going to come out and have something to prove. But what do you guys think about the Suns getting one national TV game this year, if I looked at the schedule correctly, and it's an NBA TV game, and I'm not sure that actually counts as one.
No, they have one TNT game.
One TNT, okay.
Yeah, and then they've got, 6 or so NBA TV games, which is kind of national. But Sacramento only got one.
I don't have a problem with it. I mean, this is a league that's a stars league. There's a lot of super teams. The Suns have to prove it. And if they prove it early in the year, they'll wind up with an ESPN or two games. TNT will bump them into another game. Like, this is not a rigid schedule. They will have flexibility if they're playing well. If Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton take that large jump that many of us hope they will, they'll find their way on national TV if they're worthy of it.
But, so after Christmas, ESPN and TNT both have options to switch the featured games around. Although Tim did make a good point, the Suns have very few where they're even playing on that night at all. So that makes it hard for TNT or ESPN to switch into those games. Although, you know what, the 3 and 4 night games, those are usually TNT nights. So the other ESPN gets the other nights when the entire league's playing. So yes, if you get better during the season, you're more exciting, you can be on more national games on ESPN.
Again, though, just as far as fantasy basketball goes, I know no one really cares about this as much as I do, but be very careful when you are drafting those not star players for the Suns, because their schedule is not favorable to your fantasy basketball.
Let me ask you guys a question. This is kind of related to fantasy basketball. It's kind of related to the schedule. Last season, Kawhi Leonard sat out for prescribed rest about at least 20% of the season. And he was the best player in the playoffs because he said because he was rested, he had all of his energy. How many other NBA teams are going to be even more into prescribed rest this year with their stars? Do you think that'll happen?
I don't think you're going to see star players missing 20 games like Kawhi Leonard did. I think that was a bit extreme.
I think it depends on the situation.
Probably pencil them in around 7.
What are the most likely games that those star players will rest in?
The Suns.
Well, it depends.
Which could help the Suns' record.
If they come out the gates like Tim thinks, they're not going to rest those people. All right. If they come out fast, it would, because those were games that you're not going to rest stars that early in the year. So if the Suns come out and they knock some people around in the first 6 weeks, nobody's resting against them at that point.
So we are making this, it's a midweek, it's a bit shorter of an episode. Thanks everybody so much for watching on YouTube. Do us a favor, hit that thumbs up button. It really does help with the algorithms. I cannot stress that enough, how much it helps. I do want to get in a couple of mailbag questions, if you will, from the YouTube chat. The first one comes from Tyler. He says, if Saric and Kaminsky underperform, what is your opinion on a trade centered for Kevin Love?
It's going to be harder to make that trade if those guys underperform, because at least one of them, or at least Saric, is going to be a key in returning back to a team. A team is going to want to still have a power forward to play. Maybe I guess you could maybe make the case that Cleveland will tank all over again, but they're probably going to want somebody back who can play in Kevin Love's spot. So I think if Saric really tanks, it'll make it even harder to acquire a Kevin Love.
I'd make that deal right now. I would.
Are you guys surprised that the Cavs haven't been shopping Kevin Love harder?
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing. They couldn't even find a taker for J.R. Smith's almost entirely non-guaranteed contract to get a draft asset out. I mean, talk about bad asset management.
They must have been looking for something richer than anybody was willing to.
Sure, they misjudged the market.
Yeah, but I mean, the Kevin Love thing doesn't surprise me. I mean, it's going to take a team like the Suns to make a move like that. Somebody that's a little bit desperate for a little extra veteran star power. And honestly, I'm sitting right here. I would highly consider that. And maybe later in the year, it's more of a Blake Griffin. I'd have to look at that harder.
I definitely prefer a Blake Griffin. You know what? I haven't watched much of Kevin Love this past couple of years, mostly because he's been injured a lot, and secondly because Cleveland wasn't on TV last year. Is he still the same player?
I think he hardly played last year.
I think it's tough to tell. And then what player are you?
So which Kevin Love are we getting?
I mean, I don't even think anybody knows who Kevin Love is, because he was such a vastly different player with LeBron than he was in Minnesota. So are you getting some hybrid of who he was with LeBron? Or are you getting the guy who was in Minnesota? But I'd take the chance. You might as well roll the dice.
Well, it's 2 years of huge money, though. Isn't it 2? I think he has 2 left.
I think.
Oh, he has more than 2 left, I think.
I think at some point you were going to have to roll the dice on somebody. Kevin Love might be the guy I eventually buy hard on, because you're gonna have to find a power forward, and I think his game fits more next to DeAndre Ayton than
Sure.
Blake Griffin's probably does, and I don't think you're getting Aaron Gordon out of Orlando in any way. So
Oh God, Kevin Love has 4 years left.
all right, I take it back. If it's 4 years, I'm
Good
reconsidering that.
Yeah, he's got 4 years left.
But the point still stands that I think he's a better fit than a guy like Blake Griffin would be next to DeAndre Ayton.
Okay, so Jeremiah, who, by the way, he did say this is his first time actually watching the show, not listening on the episode. So thanks for joining us, Jeremiah. He said,
Thanks, Jeremiah.
Thanks, Jeremiah.
If the Suns are doing well overall, unexpectedly, will Mikal Bridges possibly be the sixth man since I'm assuming he's saying sixth man of the year, since he's coming off the bench as a defensive specialist and uprising on the offensive end?
I think it's going to be tough to be the sixth man of the year when he's eventually starting. So,
Yeah, I think he'll be the sixth man on the Suns.
Here's the thing about the sixth man of the year award. Every year it goes to the guard off the bench that chucks the most shots. And that's not his game.
That's true. It's very, very much offensively driven, and yeah, that's not going to be what Mikal Bridges gives you, which is why I think he actually winds up as a starter. And you could convince me that Kelly Oubre could very much be in the discussion for sixth man of the year off the bench eventually. If they're winning and that change happens, I could definitely buy into that, because he's got the kind of offensive skill set that could be flashy enough that could win him that award.
Everyone's talking about Shaq Diallo.
Shaq Diallo?
Yeah.
Yeah, man, there's going to be some serious injuries or big-time losses for Shaq to could play a lot of minutes, unless he completely surprises. Dude's entering his 4th season. I mean, I don't know that he has a huge upside.
It takes one power forward injury or Frank Kaminsky really sucking to get him in.
If Frank Kaminsky pulls a Ryan Anderson, then yeah, we'll see Shaq Diallo by December.
I don't think Frank Kaminsky can rapidly age that fast, but I get what you're saying. I think Shaq Diallo is going to be the guy that fans like when he gets minutes and want to see more of him, but probably in reality don't really want to see more of
People are going to be clamoring for Shaq Diallo and Jalen LeCue.
I agree.
That's what preseason's for. So we just finished up our series on comparing the Suns backcourt to the rest in the West, and we are going to start with the forward positions this coming Saturday. After that, we're going to be comparing the centers. We haven't exactly figured out how we're going to do that yet, but we're going to be comparing the Suns starting 3 and 4s compared to the other teams in the West. So we'll start that this Saturday. If you guys want to join us, it's really early in the morning, 7 o'clock a.m. Arizona time, but I promise we will be super bubbly and more bubbly than we are right now, hopefully anyway. Dave won't be here because it's been a rough week for
all
myself.
Of us.
I didn't want to throw anyone under the bus, but there's been some shit that's been going on. But I think everyone will be super happy on Saturday morning.
Hopefully.
You guys will, for sure.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Two of the 3. Hopefully.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I think that's probably it. Do we want to answer anything else? Tell everybody how Jalen LeCue is going to have a lot of time in Prescott Valley and not in Phoenix. Anything like that?
No, we'll end it on a positive note. So thank you, everybody, for
Hey,
joining
I'm actually
us.
looking forward to going to some Naz Suns games this year just to watch Jalen LeCue play.
Road trip.
That's right. Solar panel on the road.
All right. And on that note, thank you, everybody, so much for joining us. We will be back this Saturday, 7 o'clock Arizona time.